Hello, this is Mandy's Campfire Stories. This is where I tell stories of my own as if I'm standing around a campfire and telling friends. And this first story I'm going to tell, I actually used to tell around a campfire. I had a friend that was in the SCA. She was head of a gypsy household, and she wanted me to be part of it. The only problem is I like alchemy. When it comes to medieval, there's two things I really liked: poetry and the ancient sciences. Or it's not so ancient science, the medieval sciences. I loved how seeing people from such a dark thing come through and find enlightenment, and it was very fascinating to me. So we had to explain because I was like going, if I'm going to do this, I want to be an alchemist. And she's like, if you're going to do this with me, you need to be part of my household. So I came up with a persona called Esther Auriati. And I had to have an explanation why this Giorgio, with all this learning and alchemistic talent, was with gypsies. So this is the story I used to tell around campfires when I introduced myself. Hello, I am Esther Auriati. As a young child, I was the daughter of an alchemist, a physician by trade, known to the townspeople. And my mother died when I was very young. So when my father, in his studyings and his increasing, realized that he needed a female presence to balance up his male presence, I became his Sora Mystica. And in addition to what learning he did give me, I started learning in earnest the learning of the ancients, of Miriam the prophetess, of other old and wise alchemist. I was taught Hebrew and Latin, and I served next to my father until the age of 16, when things became very horrible in my family. By that time, my brother, I loved him dearly. He was a good man who could not stay still. He had to use his hands. Scholar, not for him, but an artist, true. He had my uncle, a monk in a monastery, used his influence to get my brother an apprenticeship with a sculptor, excuse me. Like I said, my brother, reading and writing, no, but put a chisel in his hand and you got another thing coming. One holiday, it was during the harvest fest, the nobleman of our town came to see my father, and he had a request. He wanted my father to make a poison for him. He tried to make it sound like something else, but my father was the physician of the town, had great learning. He knew exactly what the nobleman was planning to use this substance for, this potion. And in anger, he cursed the nobleman and chased him out of our house. Later that evening, as my brother was coming back from visiting his friends, for he had come from the town in Italy that he was studying in, Florence, to come to visit us, he saw our men whispering and making their way to our house. So he ran, crossed a back way, and alerted my father of their approach. My father had been in town a long time, was a man who'd known deer. He knew when he chased the nobleman out of his house, what danger he was in. So he gathered his learning, his dearest stuff, and put it in a satchel, and then put it on me and practically shoved me out our back window of our house, and told me to run as much as I could, as far away as I could, to go to my uncle. A good long ways away, but the only place my dad knew I would be safe. My father was trusted. I didn't run when I first came. I was shocked, and I turned back, and through the window I saw as the men came through the door. My brother had been talking to him, and I saw them stab him. I saw his blood coming through his back where the sword was, and my father rushing to it. And then I knew I had to run. And I ran all that night. I ran through branches. I ran and fell a few times in creeks. By the time morning came, I was a shivering mess. But I still moved and ran to the point, I don't know, hours turned to days. I finally just collapsed on the edge of the side of the roadside. And that is where a gypsy compania found me. At first, they thought I was Jewish, for in my favorite state, I was muttering Hebrew, probably some lesson my father had taught me, or maybe the words of Miriam, the prophetess, or Maria Prophetessa, as some people called her. That, and my name's Esther. Yeah, my father liked that name. When they nursed me back to health, it took a few days, and finally I was able to explain to them what was really going on. And luckily for me, they took me to see my uncle. They were going that way, and they were hoping that the monastery, that my uncle, being happy to see his relative rescue, would let him have a barrel or two of wine. And they were not off on that thing, for my uncle, when he saw me, had already had the news that my father and brother were dead, and was worried sick about me. So when he saw me, he was more than willing to free a few of the barrels from the wine cellar of the monastery. Of course, I couldn't stay at the monastery. Female, marriageable age. And while I could have stayed at the nearby abbey, my uncle kind of felt it was his duty to make sure that the family lineage lay down somehow, even if it was through a female. So he found an elderly alchemist who was eager, actually, in my father's learning, and as is, tradition, and that is not uncommon for alchemists to find the widows and daughters of other alchemists in hopes of getting their knowledge, especially when it was known that I did bring such knowledge with me when I left my father's house. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, unfortunately, I did not know the man. I bear no ill will to him. But when the alchemist came to the abbey to get me, his caravan or carriage, I don't even remember now, it was attacked, and we got words of it after we had gone to the town that we were supposed to meet in. I did not really want to get married. I mean, I know that's what the proper thing to do, but I'd seen the gypsies nearby, and I decided I'd go visit them without my uncle's knowledge. And while I was there was a man there who was trying to trade with them, and he was trying to say that he knew alchemy. He did some of the oldest things in the book. It was a fraudulent thing, and I knew it. I won't even bore you with how he did it. I'd seen better. And forgeries and frauds. So, but he was making an impression, and as he was making his appeal, I talked to the leaders of the gypsy, and I told her, the matriarch, what the man was doing. And I said, he's a fraud. And she's like, can you prove it? And I said, yes, I can. And I told her what substance, what solvent she needed to use to show that what he had was painted lead and not gold. And of course, she was very grateful and stuff like that. And of course asked why I was not with my uncle, why I was away. And I explained to her my situation. And as we talked about it, and in gratitude, I was given the opportunity to become a part of her tribe, companion, and I was adopted, and that is why you see this alchemist before you today. Okay, I probably did it better back when I did it around. It's easier when you're moving around and really can get, and you're dressed up, and you can really get into character. But it's not quite the story I told, but it's close enough. And anyhow, I hope you've enjoyed it. And I know it wasn't a real complete story, but like I said, it was an introduction. And it was fun to do. And I hope you've enjoyed listening to it as much as I enjoyed retelling it. Thank you.